Welcome to my vlog. I am so excited about doing my first vlog today, and I decided what better topic to cover than conflict. Conflict is part of life. It's like taxes. You can't avoid conflict. It's part of everyone's life. What do you do with your conflict? Do you sweep it under the rug? Do you blow up and explode on the people around you? Everyone deals with conflict differently. And part of my job is to help couples or individuals work through conflict successfully. Because when you avoid conflict, it doesn't go away. It stays within your head and it creates negative emotions like resentment or anger or hurt or sadness. And those emotions just don't go away on their own. Now, there are some people who hit conflict head on, and unfortunately, sometimes they come across in a harsh and a destructive kind of way, and that alienates people. Then there are others who are silent sufferers, who just keep the conflict inside, and it builds, and it builds, and it builds. And every once in a while, they explode. But the conflict doesn't go away until you're able to successfully work through it, talk through it, and maybe even resolve it. Now, sometimes resolution of conflict is unrealistic. Sometimes you need to just focus in on managing conflict. And that may be the best you're going to do. Kind of like agree to disagree. And sometimes that is the best you're going to do. But with conflict, it's so important that you first and foremost identify what is the conflict? What are the issues that we're arguing about? Can we agree upon that? And write it out. And hopefully you can write it out where it's concrete, tangible, and very specific. And then be able to talk about the emotions that are tied to the conflict. Talk about your emotions, talk about your significant other's emotions, and then work on validating or acknowledging each other's feelings so that each of you know that the other person has some caring and some concern for the emotions that the conflict is causing you. Once you've acknowledged the emotion and validated it, then it's very helpful to brainstorm, to sit down and come up with some solutions. Well, we can handle it this way, we can handle the conflict that way. Maybe you generate 4 or 5 different options of how you're going to handle the conflict. And then you negotiate. You negotiate the different options that you find most suitable for dealing with the conflict. And each of you may have a different reason for voting for one solution over another. Which brings us to the next phase, which is probably one of the more difficult phases, and that is to compromise. To be flexible, to realize that you gotta give in some, and it can't always be the way you want it to be. The two of you come to some compromise that each of you can live with and agree upon. And lastly, to implement the solution that you've come to, and ultimately to let go of the conflict so that it doesn't continue to be a wedge between the two of you. Because with conflict comes disconnection. I see that every day in my practice. Couples have a lot of conflict, but no resolution. And over time, that conflict has caused a wedge and they've grown apart. They have learned to be very defensive, to justify their position, and to blame each other, which just further disconnects them from one another. So my challenge for you is that you will take these steps towards conflict resolution, that you'll actually implement them and maybe write them out so that you can achieve some closure and some resolution to conflict. Because conflict that remains in your head will never be resolved. It needs to reach your lips. I hope these tips have been helpful, and I hope that you can take them and use them in your relationships and in your life. Until next time, Dr. Tony Ferretti.